Story 1. Under the Blanket. Looking back, I'd say I had a pretty enjoyable childhood. Nothing bad ever happened to me. I barely ever got sick, never broke any bones or got into fights with my cousins when I visited. I was basically a picture-perfect child, not to brag. Except one time when I was visiting my older cousins, I experienced the strangest event. And even today, I still can't tell myself that it was just my imagination. I was probably about 6 years old at the time, but I still remember everything about that night like it was yesterday. I was climbing trees with my cousins most of the day, and when it got dark, we went inside. My aunt and uncle went out for dinner, so it was just us left in the old house. And then I suggested it. Let's play hide and seek. Sometimes I wonder how it would have been if I hadn't suggested that. Either way, it was Alex's turn to be it first, since he lost rock, paper, scissors, and Ray and I scattered to find a hiding place. First, I tried squeezing behind the sofa, my favorite hiding spot, but it was closer to the wall than normal. As lanky as I couldn't fit that time. Alex was halfway done counting. So as a last resort, I ran into their bedroom and looked around, trying to find any place to hide, obvious or not. Thankfully, the room was quite messy, so I figured that if I hid under the desk, I would blend in enough. Anything was better than being caught without a hiding spot. As I was about to dive under the desk, I noticed my other cousin, Ray, had already beat me there. I could see some of her long, dark hair peeking out from beneath the blanket she was hiding under. Alex was almost done counting, so I had no choice but to join Ray. I said to let me under the blanket with her, but when I reached out to pull some of it over me, she scooted away. I scooted closer and reached out again, whispering a really long please, but she jerked away to completely avoid my touch. Fine, I thought. I guess that's fair anyway. Since she was here before me, it makes sense for me to be the one to be caught first. I teasingly whispered that I could see her hair anyways, and she rustled around in the blanket trying to cover it, not succeeding. When I looked around from my hiding spot, I could see that it was definitely a good place with some boxes blocking the view of the door around the corner, so if someone just gave a quick glance over the room, they wouldn't have seen us. I leaned over and whispered how this was a really good hiding spot. Ray rustled around under the blanket in response. Then suddenly I heard Alex walk into the room. He looked around, checking under the bunk beds right across from the desk. I held my breath. He got up and walked to the closet, checking in there before going back out of the room. I let out a quiet sigh of relief and whispered to Ray how close that was. Ray rustled under the blanket again. From outside the room, I heard both Alex and Ray shout the traditional "Ollie, Ollie, oxen free" from the other room, so I started to get up, proud of not having lost hide and seek, and said come on to Ray, but she didn't move from under the blanket. That's when I realized that I had heard both of my cousins call for me to come out. I backtracked in my mind to realize that only my 2 cousins and I were home. Panic fell over me as I ran to the other room as fast as I could and saw both of my cousins standing right there. I tried to explain to them as fast as I could that someone else was in the room with me, and they, of course, being older, were reluctant to believe me. I tried pulling them to the hiding spot so I could prove it to them, and it took some actual pulling, but I finally got them there. My heart sunk when we looked under the desk, The blanket was completely flat. My cousins laughed at me as I searched the whole room, top to bottom, and scoured the boxes next to the desk for any trace of the figure or anything I could have mistaken it for. With no luck, it was gone, and still many years later, I have no explanation of what it could have been, and frankly, I'm glad I never got to see what was underneath that blanket. Story 2. Internet Friend. Let me get it out there. I am one of those nerds and geeks that spend most of their time sitting in front of their computers, watching YouTube, playing games on Steam, and reading creepypastas. It's a problem, I know. I don't need you guys to judge. Emmy? Heck, you're all probably in the same position as me. Except for one thing, it was a late Friday night. I had no school tomorrow, so I didn't have to worry about getting up early. I was on the internet, big surprise, browsing through some random sites, when an ad caught my eye. It was one of those pop-ups that say you have won something. Usually the prize is an iPhone or an iPad, but this ad was different. Congratulations, you have won me. Me? What does that mean? Normally I would have ignored it and moved on, but I felt drawn to this weird little ad. I clicked on it out of curiosity. The ad opened up a new tab, showing a chat room floating on a black background. Flickering every once in a while, a single message sat there, glowing in the darkness of my room. Hello, my friend. Without even thinking, I started to reply. Who are you, a friend? Do you have a name? Anonymous. That's not a name. Yes, it is. What is your name? I'm not telling you my name. Tell me. The sudden outburst scared me a little. I should have left the chat, but something wouldn't let me. I continued to talk to this mysterious figure. I'm not telling you my name. I want to be your friend. I can't be your friend if I don't know your name. I don't even know who you are. Why do you want to be my friend so badly? Because you won me. How? You clicked on the link. You set me free. I will find you and thank you. At this point, I had goosebumps all over my arms. I wanted to leave my computer, but I was stuck there, unable to move my body. My fingers were typing without my consent, sending message after message. You don't know where I live. I have already found you. I am coming over for a visit. Stop lying. We both know you have no idea where I am. Silly child, I am already here. Suddenly I felt a presence in my room. I tried to turn my head, but my body wouldn't let. Emmy, I heard heavy footsteps behind me, getting louder and louder as they neared my desk. A cold, bony hand wrapped around my shoulder. Their long nails digging into my skin, they leaned over, placing their head near mine, and whispered into my ear, "Thank you, my friend. Let me reward you for your good deeds." I started to feel dizzy as their psychotic laughter penetrated my skull. Before I could realize what was happening, everything went black. I woke up in a dark room, with a computer providing my only light source. My head felt terrible, like something inside was hammering at my skull. I tried to get up, but my body was still stuck. My eyes slowly adjusted to the light, and I started to make out what was on my screen. I could see what looked like me in my room. Closing my computer and getting up from my desk, I watched as this doppelganger examined my body, pulling at my skin and brushing my hand through my hair. When it looked up to face me, I gasped in fear. My eyes were now a bright yellow with cat-like pupils. Those eyes stared back at me through the computer screen, piercing into my very soul. I tried to turn away, but my body just wouldn't allow it. My replacement smiled back at me, their grin sending shivers down my spine. The screen switched back to the chat room, with one single message staring back at me. Goodbye, my friend. Years have passed since this ordeal happened. I have tried to get up and leave this godforsaken computer, but I am only able to move my arms and hands. I still have access to the internet from here, but I have been unable to contact my family or friends. The only people I talk to these days are random strangers I meet on one of the many sites I go on. Even then, I can't seem to type out the words I need to express. My fingers won't allow me to send a distress signal, always changing the message I try to convey. I am writing my story down, hoping someone will see this and know what to do. I'm using all of my strength to stop myself from deleting all of this. Someone or something doesn't want me to escape. Please, if anyone sees this, send help, send H. Please be my friend. Story 3. Frozen Release. A few years ago, I went hiking in northern Oregon with 5 close friends. Although we had planned the trip for months, we had no control over the weather, which had turned especially snowy and cold upon our arrival. Regardless, we decided to carry on with the hike. We were all quite experienced and well prepared, so none of us really gave it a second thought. The wilderness was stunning. The blankets of snow had given the landscape a dreamlike quality. It almost seemed like a crime to disturb the unbroken white expanse before us with our footprints. As time passed, the sky became noticeably darker, while the temperature dropped even more. At minus 23 degrees Fahrenheit, you can't afford to leave any skin exposed for more than a few minutes. It really is amazing how sensitive the body to extreme cold. I had the feeling we were being watched. I would catch momentary flashes of movement or a brief glimpse of something pale in the underbrush, but I could never make out the form. It was unsettling, but I tried not to think about it. In any case, it was hard to think about anything besides the temperature, which had fallen to minus 29 degrees Fahrenheit. One night I ventured out of my tent to urinate. As I approached the perimeter of a heavily wooded area, I saw undeniably human eyes staring back at me from the darkness. As soon as I saw them, they retracted back into the shadows. Spurred to action, I drew my hunting knife and ran towards where I saw the eyes. I sprinted through the blackness of the woods, chasing after what seemed to be a naked human form. After following the figure's winding path, I found myself at a huge, blank clearing that continued to the horizon, where I saw a faint gold glow in the distance. The vacant white field before me seemed haunting, yet inviting. I knew the goal light was civilization. I had no choice but to go there, since there was no chance I could find my way through the woods back to the campsite. I started walking. The frigid air pierced my layers and made me gasp for breath. The cold around me was almost dense enough to be palpable. Slowly, figures began to take shape around me. They were pallid, naked people that appeared to fade in and out of the air. All of them were staring at me and speaking in hushed, synchronized whispers. Set yourself free. I kept my eyes to the ground and kept walking. In my state of mind, I didn't care about the paranormal phenomenon I was witnessing. I was worried about the cold. My hands and ears had begun to go numb. Don't fight the cold, become one with it. I blocked out their whispers. They couldn't possibly be real anyway. I must be hallucinating from hypothermia. Is that possible? You've reached your limit. Now embrace the cold and be liberated of all limits. I couldn't help but smile. I wasn't planning on dying today. I was close to death, but even closer to salvation. I looked up to see two lines of the naked, ghostly figures on both sides of me, all staring. Don't curse the cold. You can't understand its beauty until you transcend the confines of living. Ah, don't they understand that the confines are what give life value? Of course, death sets you free, but that would be meaningless without the vulnerability you face in life. I shivered at this point. My hands, ears, and nose were completely numb. A new existence awaits you, one without fear or pain. A gust of frosty wind stopped me in my tracks. The cold was agonizing, but I wasn't ready to give up. I was the most tired I had ever been in my life, but I couldn't lie down. Not yet. Do you take pride in your weakness? Why do you fear invulnerability? I don't fear invulnerability. I would love to be freed from the shackles of mortality, to experience the world in ways I couldn't in life. My vulnerabilities prevent me from truly living out my dreams. But no, I can't die now. Suddenly, a white, naked ghost appeared in front of me with a grin on his face. Then join us. The wind stopped. Silence filled the air. I looked at the spirits around me, unburdened, at peace, free. My whole body was tingling with frost. I took off my jacket, threw off my gloves and hat, and pried off my boots. I shed every piece of clothing I had and I threw myself on my back. I gazed at the stars above me. Even as my vision started to fade, I smiled when I realized I was viewing eternity. Story for the Devil's Chamber. This is such a stupid idea. Why are we even doing this? Those were the thoughts that arose in my mind on that chilly, eerie evening. Sitting in the passenger seat of the dimly lit car which belonged to my best friend Matt, I peered out the window and glanced up at the beautiful, yet ominous night sky. The moon was huge and luminous. I looked at my watch. It was just about midnight, a time when most normal people would already be in bed. I glanced over at Matt, who was gleefully driving to our destination, seemingly unaware of how stupid this whole thing was. Why are we doing this, Matt? You know nothing's gonna happen, I said, slightly annoyed at the entire situation. Matt looked at me with aggravation. You agreed to come, so stop being a little bitch and try to have some fun, he snapped. After about 5 more minutes of driving, Matt stopped the car abruptly. Here we are, he proclaimed with genuine excitement. He then turned to me and corrected himself. Well, almost. We have to do a little walking. I followed Matt as we walked down a steep, grassy hill and ended up in the woods. Pitch black, I can't see a fucking thing, I exclaimed. Don't worry, dude, I brought a flashlight. He pulled a small flashlight out of his jeans pocket. Of course, I muttered under my breath. We continued through the woods for what seemed like an hour. Finally, we arrived in front of a vast, deep tunnel. I looked at Matt. What the hell is this thing? The Devil's Chamber. Here we are. Let's go, Matt said, dangerously eager to go inside the death trap. I stopped him. Whoa. We're not going in there, are we? We're gonna kill ourselves. What if the flashlight dies? What if there's someone else in there? What if you stopped being such a pussy and just walked in? My friend interrupted in a half-joking tone. Come on, Let's go. I reluctantly followed him into the tunnel. It was cold, dark, and damp. Insects were everywhere, not to mention all the dead rats, mice, and, of course, the occasional decaying cat. There were all sorts of graffiti covering the walls. I instantly felt something very strange throughout my body. It felt as if a bubble of negative energy was trying to push itself into me. I was overwhelmed with a sense of dread. However, I remembered how damn excited Matt was to be here, so I kept my mouth shut and continued to follow behind him. As we reached the middle of the tunnel, Matt pulled out his camera and decided to take a few pictures. For the next couple of minutes, all I heard was the loud snap of Matt's camera paired with a flash that nearly blinded me. Suddenly, I felt a small hand on my shoulder. I quickly turned around, but of course, nobody was behind me. I shrugged it off and kept walking. Maybe it was a bug, I thought, in an attempt to calm my nerves. The tunnel became colder and darker the further we walked. How long is this tunnel? I asked Matt. He turned to me and smirked. Would you relax? We'll turn back in a minute. I noticed that he was beginning to feel a bit nervous. You're right, though. We have been walking for a while. Let's turn around. We began to walk back to the entrance. I couldn't wait to get out. As we were walking, I abruptly heard something that sounded like a young girl's laughter. Then I felt it again, the hand on my shoulder. The same small, childlike hand. This time, it was more assertive, like something was really trying to get my attention. Again, I tried to tell myself that it was probably just a bug or something. I just wanted to get the hell out of this place. Finally, after what seemed like hours, we reached the entrance and quickly walked outside. We hurried through the woods and up the hill, glancing over our shoulders every so often to make sure nothing was following us. At last, we arrived at Matt's car. I wasted no time opening the passenger door and hopping in. Matt then got inside after me and started the car. He pulled his camera out of his backpack. All right, let's see what we got, he said with a radiant grin. The two of us looked carefully at every picture. Nothing, just a bunch of concrete, dirt, and spiders. Then we came across a picture of me standing in front of Matt. We both looked closely and gasped. There was a small childlike hand gently resting on my shoulder. Story 5. Catching Up. It is with you at your birth and will haunt you to the day you die. What am I talking about? Well, I am trying to put out the real answers to these questions. What is in the corner of our eye? Why do we dream? And why do we die? Okay, let's start with the first. Some people say it's a monster. Others say it was just your imagination. They are all wrong. The real reason is the essence. The essence does not have a face or limbs or any body parts. It is just all that is evil in you, all that you have hated and hurt, and every thought of the suffering that you secretly wish could be out through as much hurt as they have given you. What the essence is after you. You and you only. It is always with you in everything you do. It is with me as I am writing this, and it is watching me type out all of its secrets. But the essence cannot hurt you, for it is trapped in the corner of your eye. You look at it and you want to know what, so you turn around. Nothing. So you're probably wondering, what exactly does it look like? Well, it is just a vortex who watches you and makes you feel anger, a deep, swirling abyss, which only engages and crushes any good emotion. So in the end, all you can feel is anger, pain, and suffering. That is how it feeds. It races after you, heating up your past, your memories, everything you've ever done, and it just chases you in a desperate attempt to escape from that God-forsaken corner where he is held. Why do we dream? Because this is the only chance he gets to turn the contents of your day into a grotesque and twisted version, as he gives you a view of how it sees the world, bloody and depressing. To him everyone is massacred and can only feel pain and wants only destruction. That is the reason for nightmares. All good dreams are just to lend a false sense of security onto our feeble minds as it secretly feeds off of our bad thoughts. Dreams are also connected to madness. Anyone who has gone insane has had the essence revealed to them, and they are constantly haunted as it tells them they want to hurt you, to torture you, so do it to them. It will be worth it. But he can shape-shift and make it look like it is actually someone else. It is the reason for paranoia. Why do we die? Well, remember how I said that the essence is racing after us and tearing up our past? Yeah, well, your birthday is a day which boosts its speed up, and it becomes more obvious that it is saying, I'm catching up, in a taunting yet still creepy and threatening voice. It will watch you as you age, and with her watching and waiting and anticipating the right moment, still running that never-ending entrance to reach the end. But when it does, you may just be sitting on a chair or reading a book or knitting, when suddenly you will feel a slight pain in your eye, in the corner of your eye. You remember, don't you, that corner which used to petrify you? It used to haunt you, and you would get visions and maybe even write about what you saw, ripping out, tearing free. All those years of watching and following your every move, aging with you and scaring you, just waiting to strike, to torture, to kill, and then to feed on. Sometimes people are dead on the first sight. They call it a heart attack, but it is really just petrification, scared to death. Sometimes a murder is witnessed, but that is the essence hiding its crime and framing someone else. Well, either that or the other person's essence is acting in them as they go through this solemn activity, but completely unaware of the commotion that is stirred up, because the only emotion that they will feel at that moment is anger. But there's a warning for words uttered in such a way that only you can hear. I've won the race, and truly it has, because we all die, and we will always be beaten by our version of this demented creature. So for the next time you feel alone in the world, and that no one cares, just remember, it is always with you, but it does not care for you. It is always watching, waiting, and wanting your blood. It has been with you back when you were born. It is with you now, and it will always be there, forever and ever, and you cannot get rid of it, however hard you try. Story 6, The Peculiar Painting. The grandfather clock struck 11 as the wealthy old man rubbed his eyes, tired from reading one of his many dusty books that were stacked neatly on a tall oak bookshelf near the creaky chair on which he sat. He was a collector of the fine arts, having always had an affinity for them since he was a young adult. He had not acquired his wealth through hard work or luck. The man had the pleasure of being born into a very well-off family. He felt he had invested his inheritance well throughout the years, and took great pride in his extensive collection of all varieties of art. The first piece he had bought was a genuine Eugene de la Croix, who he admired for his expressive brush-strokes and eye-catching use of color. The balding man cast an apprehensive gaze at the newest addition to his collection, a painting that was roughly half the size of his shelf. There were many mysteries surrounding the painting, such as the fact that it was by an unknown painter, or the fact that every previous owner of the painting had been robbed blind, the painting disappearing for months at a time, before inexplicably appearing once more in a different gallery. The subject of the painting itself was even more odd. A figure of nondescript age and gender stood in the dead center of the canvas, taking up most it. The background, a desolate landscape with coins, jewelry, and other valuables pooling at the figure's feet. It wore exuberant clothing that seemed to change with every disappearance, ranging from a heavy, berry red fur coat to a light, airy dress that seemed to only be weighed down by the treasure at its toes. Some speculated that they were similar but different versions of the same painting, but testing revealed that every painting was completed at the same date, debunking the theory. When the perplexing painting appeared in a local gallery that the old man frequented, he knew he had to add it to his collection. He inquired about it, and it was sold to him for a pleasantly low price, the man attributing the cheapness to the superstition surrounding it. He was so proud of his purchase, he refused to display it with the rest of his collection, instead hanging it above the desk in his private study. He later regretted the decision, as day by day something began to bother him about the seemingly hungry gaze of the person in the painting. Once again, he brushed it off as hearing so much about the ridiculous story of the painting that stole itself, as the local paper had put it once receiving news that it showed up in the town. The shifting nature of the painting was just a bogus claim by the paper to get more readers, and the robberies were just a coincidence. He told himself no one in their right mind would try and rob him. His home, although not in the dead center of the city, was still close enough to other houses to where it would be almost impossible for them not to notice that something was wrong. With this reassuring thought in mind, the old man retired himself to bed. He was slowly awoken by the clicking footsteps of heels on hardwood floor. Slowly opening his gray eyes, he searched around the room for the source of the noise. It was too dark to see anything. He groped blindly in the dark until he found the matchbox he kept on the bedside table. Striking a match, the yellow glow of fire lightened the room, showing no signs of an intruder. He picked up a white candle, lighting it and quickly blowing out the match before the flame could reach his fingertips. Soft from years of idleness, standing from his lush bed, the floor creaked obnoxiously, evicting a short yelp from the man before he grit his mouth shut, paranoid that whatever might be in his house had heard him. As tempted as he was to blow out the candle and go back to bed, sleepless, he was determined to prove to himself that the seemingly cursed painting was just childish superstition, and nothing more. As he turned to his desk, he realized how wrong he was. In the place where the painting had previously hung was nothing but an empty space and a small hole where the nail had been, as if the painting was forcefully removed from it. He gasped in horror as he heard the floor creak behind him. The man turned around, amber light slowly illuminating an androgynous figure in a berry red fur coat, holding all that it could carry of the man's lot. It chuckled, satisfied with its work, as the man's candle was extinguished, the figure receding into the darkness of the old man's now empty home. Story 7. The Origin. You hate your brother. Dylan is a jerk all the time. Any opportunity to annul or ruin your life he'd take with both hands and run. And running literally. As soon as he'd managed to get you in trouble, he would sprint, leaving you to stew. He is always watching you, trying to find out any embarrassing secrets to spread quicker than a disease through flesh. He once told everyone your favorite animal was a unicorn, and that same day broke Mom's favorite vase, and guess who he blamed for it? It's so annoying. He's always watching you. You walk up the stairs to get a shower. You get a towel ready outside the curtains and put all your clothes on the washing basket. You turn the water on, wait till the temperature is warm, and place your head under, water flying everywhere. You pull the curtains half closed, due to your paranoia, always thinking someone is behind it, watching you. Hold on, someone is watching you. It's Dylan, holding his phone, about to take a picture. You yelp, but hear the click. The photo's been taken. Now I can show everyone your small junk. He sneers and runs away. You quickly turn off the shower, get a towel, and run to his room. Delete it now. You growl, oh I have. He smiles sweetly, but I bet Melinda won't. Melinda, the girl in your class, oh didn't I say? He sarcastically mocks. I sent it to her, and I bet she spread it to someone else. Then they will spread it someone else. I'm gonna tell Mom. You cry, what proof? Photo's gone, remember. He smirks. You can't believe this. This is the worst prank yet. You'll have to go to school. Everyone seeing the photo. You go to bed. You wake up in the morning and groan, today is going to be awful. When you get off the bus, you are greeted to mocking laughs. You sigh and hastily walk into the field. It's been 5 hours of non-stop mocking and laughing, feeling miserable, and it's finally last lesson. Science, you are doing a methane gas production experiment. Although you aren't, you're standing up with your hands in your pockets. You couldn't do this experiment. You had been preoccupied and not paying attention, ignoring all the spiteful comments around you. You managed to do this all lesson until Mr. Money, the science teacher, looks at you. What happened to your experiment? He asks you. I didn't do it, sir. You admit, well, he smiles. You can do it after school today then. The class cackles cruelly at your punishment. Your heart sinks. You want to go home as soon as possible. 5 minutes later, you're alone in the class with Mr. Money, grumpily fiddling with the experiment. Unfortunately, I can't leave you unattended. He starts from the doorway, so Mr. Franklin will watch you. You sigh. Mr. Franklin was the old, overweight Spanish caretaker. He waddles in, hating this as much as you. You peer down the vial. In your experiment, you'd make Dylan pay for this. You'd get your revenge. You'd get back at all the crap he's done to you. Get even. One day, you peek at Mr. Franklin. He's pulling out a cigarette and is about to light it. Sir, teachers don't allow smoking. I am teacher. He grunts in his deep, strongly Spanish voice. He raises his lighter to the tip of the cigarette. You remember, methane is highly flammable, sir. Don, but it's too late. A huge, flaming fireball leaps out of the air, the flames licking at your flesh. It's hard to describe. The fire is rushing through you, the intense heat overwhelming. You can feel your skin melting and dripping off, your limbs becoming weak, your muscles and skeleton exposed. The accident had removed you most your skin and muscle, leaving bitty, dangling remains of flesh off you. You were presumed dead, but you aren't. You are watching your house from a distance. The pain you went through was all Dylan's fault. Your body wasn't found because you escaped. Although the anatomy of the situation was impossible, you should have died. Every agonizing moment as you crawled away was a reminder of your hatred towards Dylan. Inch by painful inch, you managed to live. You'll get revenge. You'll do everything he did to you. You'll watch him in the bathroom, tell everyone what his favorite animal is. You might break something and say it was you. And there's nothing he can do to stop you. And guess what? You are a dead skull. Bonus stories, story 1. The other elevator, you'll think I'm crazy or just some idiot trolling online. I don't care. Something happened to me, and whether or not you believe me is moot, because it happened to me. It happened. I don't want to tell you my name. It doesn't matter anyway, because you won't believe me, and I don't want people thinking I am insane. But maybe my telling will mean something to someone. Maybe this has happened to you too, and I'm not just imagining things. God, I really hope I'm just imagining things. I visit my grandparents every summer. They live in Eastern Europe, in one of those tourist cities where the capital draws in people from all over the world. They live in an old, faded yellow apartment building. There's an elevator that I have to take to get to their floor, the 8th floor. It's one of those old elevators that most people would probably think wasn't very safe. The ones where you walk in and it's super tiny, like just big enough to hold for skinny people if they don't mind a cuddle. While there is a metal door you need to open to enter, the elevator itself has no doors, so as the elevator rises, you can reach out and run your hand along the passing wall, scraping against your fingernails. I used to like to do that. There's a little mirror someone has hung on the wall opposite, a square one with a red frame. I used to use it to check my makeup. 2 days ago, I got back a little later than usual. My grandmother buzzed me in. I called the elevator. You can always see it arrive through the little window in the metal door. It makes a loud sound each time it stops. I got in the elevator, hit the 8th floor, and turned around to face the mirror. While indulging in my little moment of vanity, I noticed something really strange. The elevator was taking longer than usual to get to the 8th floor. I turned and watched the floors fly by. Every once in a while, the metal door of the next floor would go by, where someone had scrawled each floor number in marker, except the numbers were gone, and I suddenly realized I had no idea how long the thing had been rising or what floor I was on. I also began to feel a strange warmth emanating from behind me. I turned back to the mirror and saw nothing peculiar, but the temperature continued to rise until it was uncomfortably clammy. I suddenly felt overwhelmed by the heat, like I had been sitting in a sauna for hours. I remember stumbling backward slightly, my hand reaching back to balance myself and expecting to feel the motion of the walls as they rose and fell, except what my hand touched wasn't moving, and it was warm. The mirror reflected only the same elevator and the same passing wall. I turned around to make sure. I woke up later inside the elevator, a concerned stranger shaking me awake. Nobody will believe what I saw when I turned around, so I'm not telling. At least, I'm not telling anyone I know. It was, and this is insane, I know, the elevator. Its comfortable chalk walls, the single light bulb hanging from the ceiling, everything familiar had vanished. In its place was a rectangular box with pulsating layers of speckled something, like old meat, like the inside of a mouth all around me. Then the smell hit me. That's the last thing I remember before I passed out, the smell, like pus and rot and vomit and the grave. It hit me hard, and I felt my sinuses burning in agony. I was instantly blind with my own tears, choking on my own bile. I caught one last glimpse into the mirror through my stinging eyes. The only thing that stayed, I could see it, reflected inside. I could see my elevator, my nice, normal elevator. People were getting into it, their faces plainly visible in the sunlight streaming in from outside, pushing the button for their floor. I wasn't in it. Around me, the walls began to convulse. There was a sound like retching. Then I was unconscious. I don't use the elevator anymore. I take the stairs, I think. Maybe, if you see an elevator like this, you should probably take the stairs too. Please, take the stairs too. Please, please. Story 2. The Lost Transmissions of Captain William Brinkman. Hello, static error. Hello, is this damn thing on? How in the hell? Static error. This is Captain William Brink. Static. Okay, got it. This is Captain William Brinkman of Bosun Fleet Nova transmitting. We're on an exploration and retrieval mission for Tula 13. We're scheduled to arrive on the planet in 30 days, but in the last 15 hours we've encountered major problems. We've lost 20% of our fuel, and there's only enough food for 14 more days. Even if we stretch it, it won't be enough. Someone will starve to death, and static error and Bosun Fleet Nova Transmission 30, static. This is Captain William Brinkman transmitting for record. Sometime during our sleep zone, Pilot Randall Cummings suffered an abnormally heightened case of space psychosis. Essentially, Mr. Cummings went crazy. He disabled 70% of the ship's functioning capabilities before killing Dr. Ivan Scholar and the ship's co-pilot, Deborah Yin. Debbie's screams are what woke us out of our sleep. We found Mr. Cummings stabbing her in her bed. Me, Major Cole, and our ecologist, Una Sachs, restrained him, but it was too late for Debbie. We couldn't stop the bleeding. She died in my arms minutes later during our restraint of Mr. Cummings. He hit his head on the corner of the bed rail, causing a deep gash. We tried to treat it, but static error. The ship is 40% operational right now, but the ME's operational machine is still out. It would have been able to perform the surgery needed to save Mr. Cummings. We decided, as a crew, that one of us needed to put him out of his misery. After some uncomfortable bickering, I volunteered. I tried to make it as quick and painless as possible, holding a pillow down over his face until he was no longer static error. End Bosun Fleet Nova Transmission 31. Captain William Brinkman transmitting for record. In 20 minutes, we'll be in the middle of an asteroid storm the size of the football fields. We don't have any pilots, so me and Major Cole will have to try and steer our way through the asteroids. I have to be realistic. I don't believe we will come out of this minefield alive. When you get this transmission, please tell my wife and daughter I love. Static error ending Bosun Fleet Nova Transmission 32. Static, a cranking, sputtering noise is heard in the background, followed by heavy breathing. It's Captain Brinkman. We've made it through the asteroids, but the ship is badly damaged. He takes a deep breath. Some type of god-awful thing came through the top hull of the ship. It came from one of the static error and Bosun Fleet Nova Transmission 33. Static. This is Captain William Brinkman of Bosun Fleet Nova transmitting for record. I've locked myself in the transmission locker. Captain Brankman starts crying. It devoured coal and sacks. It ripped them open and ate them like they were nothing. It came out of nowhere and chewed Juna's head like a dog eating a bone. A fucking bone. He starts gagging, gulping for air, followed by puking. I wanted to help, but it was too fast, and I was too scared. Its eyes, static error. It used Debbie and Randall's remains as some kind of fertilization pod. They've got these huge spores all over their bodies. I watched as some began to hatch. There's a loud bang at the door, then a heart-wrenching scratching sound. You can hear the fear and the captain's voice. Shit, it's at the door. I set explosives. Throughout the ship, I'm not dying alone. I'm taking these fucking things with me. When you get this transmission, every crew member aboard Boson Fleet Nova will be dead. Do not send a rescue team. Bang, static. I repeat, do not send. Another bang. Then the sound of the door being broken open makes a loud screech, like metal scratching on metal. It's here. Tell my wife and daughter I love them. Heavy growling fills the air until it's broken up by a loud shriek. Fuck you, you ugly son of a bitch. There's a menacing thud, then the horrifying scream of Captain Brankman. Static error. End Boson Fleet Nova Transmission 34. Ending transmissions for Boson Fleet Nova. Story 3. The most beautiful creature. The most beautiful creature I had ever seen never seemed to close the curtains of her room next door. We'd only moved in a week before, but it was hard not to notice a girl like her. I don't think she'd ever seen me, but that just made her that much more alluring. She was young and thin, skin as fair as winter's first fall, and she had beautiful crimson hair. I would see her dance almost every night, her hair setting fire to the air with each dip and twirl. I was instantly captivated, catching every moment from behind just the 2 panes of glass. Some nights she danced, others she just sat at her desk, sometimes talking on her cell phone long into the night. It wasn't until the end of that first month when I saw her murder that first lucky kid. It was some girl from school, a ditzy spaz whose enthusiastic introduction to the cool drugs around campus had her bounce between all the wrong groups. A perfect victim. She always did things so perfectly. It was the first night I'd seen her turn the light out so early. I might not have known what she had done if the crescent of her knife hadn't caught the moonlight. It was a silver tracer, carving through the dark that soon began to glisten a brilliant scarlet red. There were no screams. There was no sound. It must have only been a few seconds, but it felt like been watching for hours. Exquisite. When she finally turned the light back on, the ditz was obviously gone from sight, but her face, her beautiful face, was lovingly coated in a layer of fresh blood. She had the cuttest grin on her face, her eyes seductive and wild. She had crossed the deepest line. She had made the darkest sin. God, how gorgeous, her crimson hair falling so gracefully across her face, like a fallen angel. The next 3 came and went just the same. A drunken football player, a reclusive theater kid, an experimenting goth girl, all of them playing their parts in this wonderful show she put on for me all throughout the next year. She invited them into her room like an old friend, about to catch up on the latest gossip. Then you'd see it, the moment I always waited for, her hand reaching just out of sight as a smirk crept across her lips. She'd always turn the lights out for to kill, but the look on her gorgeous visage when she turned them back on, I could almost feel the ecstasy she must have felt. One day, I finally got up the courage to go meet her or maybe join her in the fun. If I was really lucky, maybe I could be the one to inspire that terribly seductive smirk. I bought some really nice clothes and expensive perfume, too. I even to try bleaching my hair blonde, hoping I could get it to shine as vibrantly as hers. But that morning came the worst news of all. My parents told me we were moving away. They had become afraid for me, as many parents had over the loss of a few teenagers. I tried to object, but what would I say if I told them about the girl beyond my window? She'd be the one that would go. Then I'd never see her again, so I obliged, hoping I would see her again someday. They sent me away immediately to stay with a family friend. It was hard. I got so anxious not being in my room again. Maybe see her dance for me one last time. My father's job meant we moved a lot, but they hated moving me out of my room. It was just hard. I would get really anxious without having my mirror on the wall. When I got out of the ward, my doctor recommended I keep it up like a window to keep me from relapsing and lashing out at my family. I thought it was weird at first, but soon I would forget it was. Even there, I'd just get so distracted. Ever since I got out, we've always seemed to move in next door the most beautiful creatures I've ever seen. And this one was a blonde, a real angel. Story 4. He comes closer when I blink. Father O'Brien, you've asked me to keep a journal, and here it is. It seems that relocating to Maryland was a waste. Moving from one house to another doesn't seem to stop anything, and the police are at a loss. If you are unable to help us, the easiest path forward is just to give up hope. Hope hurts too much if there is no faith to lift its wings. Asterisk, Day 1. Our first night on Hill Street did not offer any peace. The constant ticking of the clock was audible from every room in the house. We don't own a clock. Asterisk. Day 2. Georgia, 5 years old, and our youngest, smiled and handed me a piece of paper. I drew a picture. Daddy, she offered with an impish grin. I took it from her to inspect it. The page was blank. Georgia, my little sweet tea. This page is blank, I explained softly. Her face grew red. She stamped her feet. It's not blank, Daddy. It's a picture of our family. Put it on the fridge. Georgia almost never yells, so this concerned me greatly. But that paled in comparison to what I felt when I looked down at her and saw that she had no eyes. I should say, rather, that the whites of her eyes were in place, but nothing more. Her pupils and irises were gone. Only livid, veiny tendrils of red crisscrossed the alabaster surface. Georgia did not seem to notice they were gone. She grew louder and continued to yell. I slammed the paper onto the surface of the refrigerator and shakily affixed a magnet to it. When I looked back at my daughter, her eyes had returned. She was smiling. Thank you, Daddy, she chirped before skipping down the hall. Asterisk. Day 3. I had gotten out of bed in the middle of the night for a glass of water. I can't explain it perfectly, but humans do have a certain amount of echolocation at their disposal. Something about the way our house sounded was off. I stepped into the darkened living room with the hopes of alleviating my fear, but the discomfort only grew. I fumbled for the light switch and flicked it on. The entire room was upside down. All of the furniture was affixed to the ceiling as though it were the most natural state in the world. Lights illuminated the scene before me by shining upward from the ground. After staring for several seconds, I decided that the best approach was to turn the lights back off. This way, at least, I wouldn't have to see it. The rest of the house was, or at least felt, right side up. The living room appears normal in the daylight. Day 4. The locusts are bad this year. Every garden on the block has wilted except for ours. We planted tulips, but only snowdrops are growing. I have to mow the lawn twice a day to keep it from getting overrun. Day 5. A box arrived in the mail today. It had my name on it, written in a child's handwriting. There was no return address. Inside the box were 1,913 human teeth. Day 6. The refrigerator is now completely covered with drawings that Georgia has given me. Every single one of them is blank. Day 7. I get up before the rest of the family every day to inspect the house. The interior was fine this morning, though I did avoid the living room light. I no longer look in that room before dawn. There were footprints outside the door. The prints formed a long, muddy trail from the street. They appear to come from a man's shoe. At least the first ones did. As the prints got closer to the house, they became gradually elongated. First 12 inches, then 13, 14, a foot and a half, and finally to feet long. The last 2 prints in front of the door were the width of my torso, and as long as I'm tall. Day 7. I'm typing this on my laptop in bed. My wife has been calling me softly and patiently from the living room. Her voice is coming from the ceiling. I'm too afraid to go out there. Tell me, Father, what happens after the 7th day? Story 5. Prime, I love creepy pastas. And chances are that if you are reading this, so do you. I've been into them for about a year now. Like most the community, enjoy the sudden jolt of well-cooked piece of pasta can provide the way a perception can be built up in a mere couple of sentences, then be violently smashed down. I've appreciated all the classics, from No End House and Candle Cove to the Secrets of the Holder series. I heard about a group of guys recently that kept talking about wanting to take their pasta to the next level. The kind of story that changes you as a person, gives you a new outlook on life. They posted on a forum, and the impression I got from lurking at the time was that they were building the story fragment by fragment, a mishmash of text that was being amalgamated as much in the public as it was via personal message. I do know that it was eventually finished, and that a grand unveiling was planned at midnight on the forum for atmospheric effect. This caused some minor grumbling as they all lived in different time zones, but GMT was eventually agreed upon. Many waited with bated breath for this alleged perfect pasta that had grown from the minds of many, yet were disappointed when there was no sign of activity from any of the original creative group. A couple of days later, one of them signed on to the message board and left a brief message. Slender Manrelez 89, UJ3 Dirged for 98, Lee 404 and 8540J. You know exactly what we were thinking at that point. Publicity stunt. That's what we continued to say to ourselves over the coming weeks as more and more messages started to pile up from all the authors. Most of them were nonsensical, a couple downright disturbing. Creepy Boy 97. Dazzling Dazzles Least Landsdaz. Ling Daz Ling Diz Ling Ling. Azrael's blade. T T T T T T T T T T T T T T O M M M M M M M M U C C C C C C C C C C C H. The Godfather. It took a little while, but I got 'em oit. They taste like jelly. At this point we started to get a little worried. Weeks had passed since the supposed release date, and there was no sign other than these repeated postings of the forum, so we started to investigate further. Initial findings showed that the group had shared the story among themselves prior to the release, a couple of them bragging of the fact on various other forums. More details came to light showing that one of them, Rat Fanatic, had been the final editor, stitching all the text together, then sending it out to all of them. Research of his Facebook showed one status not long after, "I can't focus anymore. My mind keeps being drawn back to it. I can see where I stand, and it terrifies me." All of the others showed had followed suit, and slowly but surely described a gradual descent into depression, mania, and ramblings of finally understanding. At this point, all sorts of theories were flying around, all fixated on this story. We scoured the news reports and found that over the course of time we were able to tie missing persons reports up to all the forum members from throughout the world. Accounts were investigated showed that the homes they had left behind had been trashed. Their computers had all been destroyed, as if there had been some shared belief that burning or smashing the source of their fear would somehow alleviate it. There was no mention of the pasta, but to be honest, we wouldn't have expected that. To this day, we don't know where they are, and you would believe that would be where the story would end, were it not for one final postscript. A message was found. Voltrinator. Yeah, I just got it in my inbox, but I haven't read it yet. Don't tell anyone, but I'm gonna fire a couple of copies to some friends. They've been begging me for this, and I do owe them one from way back. They are gonna be stoked. No one knows who he was referring to, and nothing has been heard of since. Who knows? Maybe it's still out there, floating on some dead site that gets like a hit a year. No one knows the title, so your guess is as good as mine. The only thing I will say you is be careful out there. Next time you stumble across some pasta you've never tried before, I don't know. I mean, how would you even know until it's too late? Story 6. The Critic. I had a really bad few weeks lately. I was sincerely terrified to be in my own goddamn one-room flat. In fact, I was terrified to be anywhere. The feeling of something following me and the shadows crawling around walls and corners where I wasn't directly looking at never left me. I started to hear voices, whispers, steps, speech, even distant, eerie music being played somewhere quite not this dimension. I swear that even my image in the mirror began to change in some sinister way. I bathed in my own sweat when I woke up from my short night's sleep filled with unspoken nightmares. I didn't feel safe even outside. Something was gathering upon me, and there was no escape from it. All this started to take place some while ago when I decided to write a horror story, a creepypasta. In fact, I have always been a fan of horror, but the last time I was being engaged in it in a larger scale, things didn't go too much better. Only then I understood to quit in time. Moving out from my parents' house about a year ago triggered some unknown processes in my psyche. Now when I'm alone most of the time, my imagination summons up horrors I had no idea were waiting in the back of my head. these horrors I now wanted to let out on my computer's screen. Why not cause nightmares to other people who enjoy them as well? As I kept writing, the uneasy feeling grew day by day. I listened to every sound coming from the apartment and the other flats around. I was able to write only by day, since the nightfall seriously got on my nerves even without the creepy shit I let my fingers type straight from my subconscious mind. I constantly looked back over my shoulder and avoided closets and even the bathroom until I absolutely had to go in and turn the painfully flickering light on. It was particularly scary to take a shower just standing there in a closed space. Anything could be going on outside or inside for that matter. One day, the evening was already coming, and I was in such a pathological flow I couldn't turn my eyes for a second from the petrifying story that was being born before my eyes almost by itself, my heart bumping like a hammer. Suddenly I woke up from my trance. It was already dark outside. I started to sweat like a sponge. This was the first time in months the night caught me until I realized the darkness was falling. Somehow I had known deep down that if it was to happen, something terrible will occur. Then all the lights went off. Actually, all the electricity did, creating an unbroken silence. Only the computer stayed on. I sat in the dark, almost unconscious because of the shock and fear. I thought I was dying when the freezing coldness took over me. But it was not only the warmth escaping my paralyzed limbs, but the temperature in the room. That's when I heard it, the voice behind me. I swear all my hair stood up on its end. The voice, which sounded like it came beyond the grave or even some more unknown place, said, "I have been watching you." I was so grateful the source of the voice didn't reflect from the computer screen until a hand was laid on my shoulder, an icy hand of grasping, suffocating nightmare. The voice from another world continued, "I was sure to die where I sat. I have been." I shut my eyes in utter, brain-grinding, stomach-slashing terror. Completely sickened by this shit, I opened my eyes. Sheesh. Seriously, even my 2-year-old niece wouldn't be afraid of this crap. Then the hand, the undescribable hand of whatever was the ghoul behind my back, rose, reached for the computer, and deleted my story. I heard dragging steps been taken when the uncreature turned slowly away to leave. Soon the electricity came back, and the frozen air swept away. Everything was like before. It took a while to recover from this, but finally I dared to look back. Nothing. See what I was talking about. Good fucking Lord, all that shit I had to bear. And then some bloody night creep comes and bashes me like this. Luckily, it didn't remember to delete the file from the trash bin. Story 7. Rattles. 58, 59, 60 I counted. Josh took note. We moved on to the next box, this one full of electrical wires. I began counting. It was nearing 12 o'clock at night. Inventory was tedious. The warehouse was hot and had no AC, but we were getting paid overtime, which made it worth it. We were the only two left. Everyone else was gone hours ago. There was still a lot of work to do, but we didn't mind. Every couple of hours, we made a run to the nearby taco chain to keep us energized. Suddenly, I felt the effects of one of those tacos creeping up. I started counting faster. 125, 126, 127. I finished after a moment. Josh took note. "I'm gonna take a dump," I said. Josh nodded. He started counting the next box himself as I walked off towards the bathroom. I opened the door to the office section of the building, where the bathrooms were. Through the large glass window I saw her for the first time. She was pale as snow, her hair a light, wispy blonde. She wore a thin, faintly blue dress, nearly translucent. In the light of the full moon, I could see her pale, naked body under it. She was beautiful, yet scars stretched across her stomach as if it had been cut across with a knife over and over. She lifted a finger, beckoning me. Then, as soon as I saw her, she was gone. I shook my head and blinked, and yet saw nothing but the darkness and moonlight beyond the door. Half sure I had saw nothing, and half sure it was a trick of my mind, I turned right and went into the bathroom. I sat on the toilet and pulled out my phone. For some reason, the internet wasn't working. Wi-Fi. I muttered and placed it back in my pocket. Then the hissing began. At first it was faint, and I assumed it was only the plumbing, and yet as it grew louder and louder it began to sound more and more like a voice, the voice of a woman. Suddenly the sound was unbearably loud, and then it began, the rattling. The handle to the stall door rattled as if someone on the other side was trying to get in. Soon the door began to shake, and within seconds the whole stall was in convulsion. The hissing grew only louder and formed into words. "Come to me," it beckoned. "Come to me." It whispered into my ear. A mixture of terror and shock had me frozen, glued to the seat. Then I looked down. Below the door I saw them. Her feet. I hadn't paid much attention to her feet when I saw her before, but I knew they were hers. I knew. "Come to me." Suddenly, in a burst of both courage and insanity, I lunged for the door, knocking into it with both fists. And everything was quiet. I stood there, breathless, staring at the door, not daring to look down. Finally, my eyes dragged down to the floor. The feet were gone. The door creaked open, seemingly of its own will. I almost left then and there. I almost bolted out of the building. But I knew I couldn't leave Josh with her in here, and knew I had no choice but to return to the warehouse. "Josh," I yelled at the top of my lungs as I pushed through the door. "Josh, we have to leave." "Nah." I heard no reply. Terror gripped me, but I kept going. When I made it to the end of the warehouse, I saw him hanging. His feet were tied together with electrical wire, his fingers severed. He hung upside down from the ceiling, a pool of blood gathering beneath him. Above his pelvis, a large gash ran across his belly, and his entrails spilling from the wound. His tongue was stretched out across his face, a long, crude, rusted nail driven through it into his forehead. I couldn't move. That's when the hissing began again, at once as loud as it was before. In the hissing I heard her whispers. "Come to me," she said. "Come to me." I turned around and looked straight into her burning red eyes. Her mouth slipped open as she repeated her mantra. She extended her arms and embraced me. I closed my eyes shut for the final time.